In a rare and forceful display of judicial oversight, a unanimous three-judge panel of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a stinging rebuke of the Trump administration's conduct in the Abrego Garcia immigration case. Departing from routine appellate deference, the court confronted a dispute that has escalated from an ordinary deportation proceeding into a constitutional flashpoint. At issue is whether the executive branch will comply with a Supreme Court directive mandating the facilitation of a lawful alien's return, or whether it will continue to flout orders and risk undermining foundational legal safeguards. This report examines the outline and implications of the ruling. The case centers on Jose Abrego Garcia, an El Salvadorian national who was removed from the United States despite a lower court's injunction against his deportation. In her initial decision, District Judge Scenes found that the government had acted in direct violation of both her orders and binding Supreme Court precedent. The administration conceded error, but refused to adjust its procedures, arguing that it had discharged its obligation by physically depositing Mr. Garcia outside U.S. borders. This procedural impasse prompted further litigation over the scope of executive authority and the meaning of facilitate in immigration enforcement. Judge Scenes responded by threatening contempt proceedings, ordering the administration to provide daily status reports on efforts to secure Mr. Garcia's return. These reports, filed each evening, were criticized as non-responsive and perfunctory, detailing no substantive actions. The district court found that such minimal disclosures did not satisfy the Supreme Court's charge to actively assist Mr. Garcia's lawful re-entry. With frustration mounting, the judge authorized expedited discovery to ascertain whether contempt had become a judicial inevitability. Meanwhile, the government prepared its appeal to the Fourth Circuit, seeking relief from what it characterized as judicial overreach. In its appeal, the administration contended that once Mr. Garcia was removed from its custody, the court's supervisory authority dissipated. It asserted that a facilitation required merely passive observation until Mr. Garcia presented himself at a port of entry. According to the administration's interpretation, any further involvement would exceed the judiciary's proper remit. This contention struck the Fourth Circuit as an attempt to constrict due process to a theoretical construct. The government's posture implied that it could indefinitely incarcerate or deport individuals without judicial review, a proposition that the appellate judges found both untenable and at odds with constitutional guarantees. When the Fourth Circuit convened, it faced not only a question of statutory interpretation, but a broader inquiry into separation of powers and the rule of law. Unusually, the court chose to address the case with immediacy, issuing its decision within days of argument. This expedited handling underscored the gravity with which the appellate bench viewed the government's actions. The panel underscored that a district judge is entrusted with implementing Supreme Court mandates, and that appellate courts must refrain from undermining, not shield, such judicial officers from executive resistance. The panel's unanimous opinion delivered a scathing rebuke. It declared, "We shall not micromanage the efforts of a fine district judge attempting to implement the Supreme Court's recent decision. By affirming Judge Scenes' authority, the court reinforced the principle that lower courts play a vital role in enforcing constitutional commands." The opinion emphasized that the judiciary serves as a check on executive power, ensuring that deviations from legal norms do not become entrenched. This affirmation of judicial oversight represented a clear message to all branches of government regarding the inviolability of court orders. Critically, the opinion confronted the administration's redefinition of a facilitate. The judges observed that under the government's view, the term could be rendered meaningless, equating to complete judicial impotence. They warned that allowing such a narrow interpretation would reduce the rule of law to lawlessness and tarnish the very values for which Americans of diverse views and persuasions have always stood. This rhetorical flourish underscored that unchecked executive interpretation of judicial directives risks eroding fundamental liberties and the constitutional order itself. The court further highlighted the dangerous precedent embedded in the government's stance. Hence, It noted that if the administration could reject duties arising from loss of physical custody, then it could deport American citizens or political dissidents without meaningful recourse. Such a framework, the opinion stated, would shift the balance of power irrevocably toward the executive. Sufword. By spotlighting these broader implications, the Fourth Circuit transcended a narrow statutory debate and engaged in a constitutional analysis, underscoring the interconnectedness of individual rights and institutional integrity. 4. In practical terms, the ruling leaves the administration with limited options. A direct appeal to the Supreme Court is unlikely to succeed, given that the highest court has already confirmed the district court's core holding. Moreover, the appellate court opined that there is nowhere to go beyond affirming Judge Seen's order. Complying with the directive to facilitate Mr. Garcia's return appears to be the only path that preserves both executive credibility and public confidence in the rule of law. Failure to comply risks triggering judicially sanctioned sanctions or criminal contempt adjudications. Since the Fourth Circuit's decision, the administration has continued to file daily status reports that offer no substantive evidence of progress. Observers note that these filings resemble boilerplate declarations rather than genuine efforts to secure Mr. Garcia's re-entry. Each report deepens the government's vulnerability to contempt charges as Judge Seen's proceeds with expedited discovery to determine whether contempt is willful. Legal analysts caution that if contempt is found, sanctions could include fines or imprisonment of individual officials, a step rarely applied against high-ranking executive actors. At the heart of this dispute lies a fundamental question. Can the executive branch evade judicial supervision by claiming its custodial duties end at national borders? The Fourth Circuit's answer is unequivocal. Judicial authority does not evaporate simply because the government delivers on a physical deportation. Instead, courts retain jurisdiction to enforce compliance with lawful orders. This principle ensures that no branch of government can operate beyond the reach of constitutional checks and balances, preserving the integrity of American constitutional governance. Legal scholars warn that prolonged non-compliance could precipitate a constitutional crisis, pitting the judiciary against an unyielding executive. While President Trump and his advisors have signaled willingness to contest perceived overreach, this case illustrates the limits of executive power when confronted by a unified judicial command. The ruling serves as a cautionary tale to future administrations about the perils of interpreting statutory obligations in ways that circumvent fundamental rights and judicial oversight. Looking ahead, the District Court's expedited discovery will trace the administration's internal communications and decision-making processes. Should evidence confirm intentional defiance, Judge Seen's may schedule contempt hearings, potentially coercing compliance through personal sanctions. Historically, such measures have been reserved for parties unwilling to abide by clear court directives. This case tests whether the judiciary will exercise its full toolkit to preserve the rule of law, even against the highest levels of executive authority. In sum, the Fourth Circuit's decisive intervention in the Abrego Garcia litigation reaffirms the judiciary's role as a guardian of constitutional due process. By upholding the district court's orders and rejecting a narrow construction of a facilitate, the appellate judges safeguarded both individual rights and institutional balance. The administration's next moves will reveal the extent to which executive actors respect judicial boundaries. Until Mr. Garcia is safely returned, this case remains emblematic of the enduring tension between law and power in American governance.